Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to puff him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
What's up, everyone? This is Noah Dalzell, and I'm here at the Auerbach Center with Bobby Manning, where the Celtics just concluded a very long practice. It was almost 2.5 hours. And we got to hear from a couple of people, but most importantly, we got a good update on Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Jaylen didn't go through the live portion of practice today, but took part in some things. His status unclear for Wednesday still. So a handful of days left. They're off through the weekend. Maybe he can ramp up in a practice or two to start next week. But he's considered day-to-day, Joe said. So all we can do is say, what's it going to look like on opening night if Jaylen's not out there? Because it doesn't seem like he's going to miss a long period of time here, but he could miss some, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it, but really this team doesn't have the depth of talent that they've had in previous seasons. So no Jaylen Brown and no Jason Tatum. Like, you're now kind of starting to have a thinner margin of error. But I also think the way this team is built and the way that the system is constructed is that they do want to go 11 guys deep oftentimes. And so it's just going to be kind of a next man up mentality. And the good news that we gleaned from what Joe Mazzulla had to say at practice is I don't think this is going to be a long-term thing, even if he's not available for Wednesday against the 76ers, which is opening night.
Yeah, and that's the insight I've gotten so far, too, is there doesn't seem to be a ton of concern about it. It looked worrisome when it happened. I mean, anytime a guy goes back to the hamstring like that, you're like, weeks. You said months. I was like,
you
whoa.
never know.
But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, at least for now here. I'll say this. When he went down, I think in the first quarter, it was 38-31 Raptors the rest of the way through the half. Celtics led by 2 at halftime, played them even, I think 58-58 in the second half. So that's better than you would expect, I'd say, for a team that's missing Tatum, Brown, and all the talent they were from last year. Going against Ingram, Barrett, quickly, that was a decent Toronto team. I know in crunch time the backups are out there anyway. But I thought, as we looked up during the course of the game, I was like, if they win this is going to be really impressive, and they did.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the load was shouldered by Derek White, who had a monster performance in that overtime game, and I think he's going to just be critical for this team moving forward, and particularly if Jaylen's out, you're going to see him shoulder a ton of offensive responsibilities. So I wouldn't be surprised if Derek White's averaging 25 points per game, especially if Jaylen's sidelined for the first few games of the season. Obviously, it's not just the scoring that you're missing. He carries a big role defensively, but I think that the way that this new defensive system is going to be designed is going to benefit, if there's one guy on the floor that's a little bit of a liability, they're going to kind of make up for that with all the aggression and the double teaming and all of that. So the big picture, I don't think this is one of those injuries that, I started thinking about, what if he does miss 2 months or, this team is just not in position to lose a key player for that period of time. But I don't think we have any reason to think that right now. And if you go back and watch the play, he kind of hobbles off, but it doesn't look like there's a look of immense, fear or pain on his face.
He stayed in the game for a couple more possessions.
He did stay in the game. And it was a non-contact play, which is never a good sign. And hamstring, soft tissue injuries, you don't ever want to see that stuff. But it was also preseason, so as long as he had anything at all, he wasn't going to play. And obviously him going through some of practice today is a good indicator as well that even if he's not available on Wednesday, he should be available here soon.
We know Pritchard, too, going to shoulder a bigger role alongside White in those situations. I said it to you during the game. It's interesting to watch, the guards, and Sampson said this, too, when we were in Toronto, run everything for Boston. This is actually going to be, more of a point guard-oriented attack, especially if Brown is out at any given point. And I was curious, did Pritchard struggle because the Raptors pressured him more, or were they putting more primary front row, line attention on him? And that didn't appear to be the case. And he said today even that they went through an intense practice the day before to simulate a back-to-back situation against Toronto on Wednesday. And that makes the win all the more impressive to me, is the fact that they were gassed and went out there and played the game to simulate that scenario.
Yeah, and I have zero concern about Peyton Pritchard's shooting performance from that game. I think ultimately he's been getting good looks throughout preseason, and that's the most important thing because obviously he's higher on the scouting report, and nobody's going to just forget about him in a game, especially on this particular Celtics roster. But honestly, regardless, after the campaign he had last year, I think he's front of mind for people. So he's been getting good looks. I've been impressed with some of what he's done on the other end as far as boxing out, helping on the boards, defending. I think you're going to see the all-around parts of his game that I think Joe Mazzulla has been stressing for a long time. We're going to see that now. And, he made clear that Jaylen Brown coming off the court was not a massive issue for him or for the Celtics, and here's exactly what he had to say about that.
Does your role in the offense change?
No. I never look at it like that. I just play the same way regardless. Make the right reads, make the right passes, make the right shots. So should never think of like when somebody's coming out, you got to play a certain way. Like for me, it's no matter who's on the court. Like if that's the right shot for me to take, I got to take it. If it's the right pass to make, then I got to make that pass. So that's how basketball should be viewed.
And so I think we look at it from a roster construction standpoint of like, okay, they already have just a couple of returners that played a pivotal role last year. Now you're going to lose one, then what? But that's just not how NBA players view it. And I think
that's not how this team's going to work, really.
And I think Peyton, among everybody else, is going to look at it as like, okay, Ugo is going to step up, Baylor is going to step up, Sam's going to step up. We didn't see Sam Hauser in the preseason finale. Joe said that was just for rest, but that's certainly a guy who's going to play a larger role if Jaylen Brown's out of the lineup. I anticipate that he will be ready. If I had to guess right now, I think Jaylen will be available. But if he's not, I think Sam just slots in for him in the starting lineup, and you have Chris Boucher and Neemias Queta starting alongside him. So there's still some flexibility here, despite the fact it's not the championship roster with a ton of that flexibility.
Yeah, and I think you saw two things in that game, and throughout the preseason in particular. They're just going to scramble around defensively, run, and whoever scores off that's going to score. It's like a system, and they're just having guys come in and out of these games. They're all cogs in it, and you don't notice too much drop-off between different lineups and different players so far. It's all pretty interchangeable, and obviously Brown, when it comes to actually getting a shot off at the end of the game or running a set where they need it or just scoring the amount of points you're going to need throughout the flow of a game, we're not going to sit here and say they're going to be fine without Brown, but that game and other examples throughout the preseason, he wasn't out there every time, and they were still faring decently offensively. So I do think that they can survive more than I thought they did previously without a guy like that. It's going to be a struggle defensively, perhaps, against certain matchups. They're going to have to go to different lineups and go deeper into their rotation. But you see that the system's able to maintain it. The concern I have is the turnovers, and I do feel like we saw an uptick in turnovers into the second half after he went out. I know Joe said he kept Simons out there and no other ball handlers as some test, but the turnovers were pretty constant throughout the preseason. And I know you asked Joe today what's the biggest optimism right now, and it's the defense, the point of improvement, or just where they're the furthest. I'd say the biggest area they have to go is ball control, and that might actually be where, despite all the jokes about his ball control, I think that might actually be where you miss him most. They don't have a lot of frontline ball handlers right now, especially when he's out.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, what gives you the most comfort if you're Joe Mazzulla right now is knowing that you have two guys that can really handle the ball and handle pressure and have a lot of experience doing so in Derek White and Peyton Pritchard. I'm not sure about Anthony Simons yet. Yeah, I'm not sure. And they don't really have tons of backup point guards on this roster. I mean, I'm starting to think maybe Ron Harper Jr.
Oh, I knew you were going to say it.
But they just
Bring
don't
back
have,
JD.
I'm not going to say it, but I am thinking it, that I would love to see JD Davison on this roster. But so that's where they currently lack a little bit of depth, or at least a little bit of uncertainty, because I don't think that Anthony Simons' late game turnover issue is necessarily representative of his game in its entirety. I don't want to overreact.
No, it's the whole team right now.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And also maybe he actually can handle that role better than he did in that stretch. Again, I'll be the first to say I've watched Anthony Simons on a limited portion of his career, given that he's played in Portland his entire time. So I'm curious to see kind of how he handles a larger role. But I think in any case, we will see kind of the whole team have to make up for Jaylen's absence on the offensive end, just because he is their engine, and he has been for a long time alongside Tatum. So now you're really leaning into the guard-heavy style. Only
other update, Joel Embiid is going to play tonight, so he's potentially in line to return for that opening night game. Jaylen's status to be determined. No Paul George expected on the Philadelphia side for that game. So we're getting close.
Yeah, and that's it for us today from practice. Celtics are off Saturday and Sunday. We haven't gotten the schedule for next week, but I would imagine they have at least a few practices before Wednesday's opening night. And we'll have more coverage. You can check the entirety of all of the pressers today. We heard from Joe Mazzulla, Ron Harper Jr., who just signed a two-way contract, and Peyton Pritchard, who has been giving us some really nice insight into what things are like behind the scenes right now. So go check those out.